Breaking news, the Chicago Bears have traded for Chiefs All-Pro guard Joe Thuney. What's up, guys? The Chicago Bears have pulled off another trade, the second trade in the last 24 hours to beef up this offensive line. And on top of that, they did not trade a pick from this year's draft. My biggest hope from this whole thing, the rumors they've been going over the pick details for the last 15 minutes. I was putting a couple of graphics together and getting this live ready, trying to wait until we had full details on what the trade was. It is a 2026 fourth round pick. We don't have a fourth round pick this year. It is a fourth round pick in next year's draft, 2026, for Chiefs All-Pro guard Joe. I don't know if it's Thuney or Tooney. I tried to find a pronunciation of it, but it's Joe Thuney, the new guard of the Chicago Bears. He has a cap hit this season of $16.9 million. This is a guy who in 9 seasons in the NFL has only missed 2 career starts. An absolute Iron Man. The one thing I do want to discuss a little bit is when breaking down the new offensive line now, because one thing about this guy, he has played every single snap almost of his entire career at left guard, where that is also where Jonah Jackson has played the majority of his career. But Jonah Jackson has also taken snaps, 200 plus snaps at right guard when he was with Detroit. And then he had over 100 plus snaps last season at both right guard and center with the Rams. So I'm projecting our new offensive line to look like this as of right now. Braxton Jones is our left tackle. Joe Thuney is at left guard. Our center, still waiting on that, but there is a report that Drew Dahlman is expected to hit free agency. That's a big name to watch right now. I believe Jonah Jackson is now going to be our right guard, playing right next to Darnell Wright. This offensive line, we are still 5 days away from free agency, and the offensive line has already been upgraded in a major way. Now, Jonah Jackson is a guy with Pro Bowl potential. Meanwhile, Joe Thuney is a guy who has been to the Pro Bowl for 3 straight years as an All-Pro, a guy who's missed 2 starts in his entire 9-season career. He's won 4 Super Bowls. He won 2 with the Patriots and 2 with the Chiefs. Or it might have been 1 with the Patriots, 3 with the Chiefs. Either way, 4 Super Bowls. This guy is an absolute stud. Here are his numbers over the last couple of seasons. In 2024, he gave up 0 sacks, 25 pressures. In 2023, just 2 sacks and 33 pressures. Only 1 sack back-to-back in 2022 and 2021, allowing about 15 pressures a season. And then all the way back to 2020, only 2 sacks and 17 pressures. This guy is an absolute monster and instantly the best player on our entire offensive line. He actually got votes last year. He finished 10th in the NFL in Offensive Player of the Year voting. Guys, think about that for a second. Whoop, whatever you're doing, stop. When was the last time you saw an offensive lineman get votes to be Offensive Player of the Year? That's a quarterback. That's a quarterback award. That's an award that goes to quarterbacks, maybe a running back, maybe super rare to a receiver. He finished 10th in voting for the AP Offensive Player of the Year at age 32. The one thing I will say, this guy is on the downside of his career. Now, Some offensive linemen have been able to play later into their careers and actually get better. And that actually might be the case for Joe Thuney here. If you look at his first 6 seasons in the NFL, right? He went to one All-Pro, and that was it. One All-Pro in his first 7 seasons. Last 3 seasons, 3 straight All-Pro appearances, 3 straight Pro Bowl appearances. This is a guy who seems to be getting better as he gets older. He's going to be 33 years old this season. He is absolutely the best player on our offensive line from day one. He's going to help stabilize our entire front five. I believe he's going to play left guard. That's where he's played. Let me put that graphic back up. It's over 10,000 snaps. This is his career right here. 10,734 snaps at left guard. He also has, I believe it was like, he has 470 snaps in his career at left tackle and 8 snaps at right tackle and then 128 at center. So, I mean, he could actually come in. You know what? There is actually a possibility here that we brought him in to be our center. He's a guy who can play center. He did it in 2020 for a little bit. I believe he's going to be our left guard. That is 100% what I believe. But if we strike out on someone like Drew Dahlman in free agency, I believe there is a chance he could be a backup plan on the offensive or as far as center goes. He's a guy who has so much experience. And what did Ben Johnson say? What do you want from the center position? You want someone who's gonna help set the tone, someone who's gonna be a leader, and he even mentioned being a veteran as well. So if there's a chance we lose out on Drew Dahlman in free agency, this is a guy who could potentially pivot and be our center. And in that case, it would be Jonah Jackson who goes to left guard. And then we'd still be looking to add a right guard. But right now, let me break it down again, guys. Chicago Bears are trading a 2026 4th-round pick for 4-time All-Pro Joe Thuney. This guy, I got to catch my breath. We have completely rebuilt the interior of this offensive line in less than 24 hours, 5 days before free agency. This is huge, guys. This is one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL. A guy who the last few years has actually played better than Trey Smith. Now, he's not 25 years old like Trey Smith. And that's where the Chiefs, I think this is the decision the Chiefs made here, guys. When you look at it, it makes a lot of sense here, right? The Chiefs were about to lose Trey Smith. He's 25 years old, and he's an ascending potential Pro Bowl type player, right? And then you have Joe Thuney, who's actually been a little bit better, but he's 32 years old, and you're already paying him big money. Why not move on from him and let Trey Smith develop over the next few years? Now, for the Bears, I think this is actually perfect. We can use a veteran on the offensive line. We need guys who can be good right now. This is perfect for the Chicago Bears. My only wish was maybe that he was a right guard instead of a left guard, because right now we just added 2 left guards in the last 24 hours. That's my only one potential down from this is both guys that we traded for in the last 24 hours are guys who played left guard. Now, I will say this, guys. I was working on a graphic. Let me see if I can upload it real quick. I was working on a graphic because a lot of people have made a big deal about the amount of games missed by Jonah Jackson. I'm going to pivot and talk about Jonah Jackson for just a second before I get back to Joe Thuney, because everyone's talking about, all these guys have missed games. They're all missing games. I have a graphic here that shows the guys who are going to be free agents and how many games they've missed. And you're going to be blown away here, because everyone's making a big deal about Jonah Jackson. let's look at this for a second, okay? It's on the right side, okay? If you look at games missed, going down that list there, the left number is how many games they missed this season, right? And then the right number is how many games they've missed over the last few years. So when people are making a big fuss about Jonah Jackson missing a couple of games, look at this year's free agent class, right? Drew Dahlman missed 8 games this season. Will Fries missed 12 games this season. Mekhi Becton has missed 35 games in his career, 10 more than Tevin Jenkins, and he's 2 years younger. That's insane. Aaron Banks missed 5 games this year. James Daniels missed 13 games this year. Ryan Kelly missed 7 games this year. So people making a big deal about Jonah Jackson missing a couple of games, that is something I just kind of wanted to address why I had you guys here. But the Chicago Bears have completely revamped the interior of the offensive line in less than 24 hours now, trading for Jonah Jackson, the former Pro Bowler from the Rams. And now the biggest part about this trade, my favorite part, is we did not give up a draft pick from this year. I figured when they were the talks early were like, hey, yeah, Jonah Jackson has played right guard. I talked about that a little bit. Not a ton, though. Jonah Jackson has played a little bit of right guard, but not a ton. But that's why I do believe, I showed this a few minutes ago, that our new offensive line is going to look like this. Right? This is going to be what our O-line looks like now. We're going to have Jonah Jackson pivot over to right guard, and he's going to play next to Darnell Wright. You're going to have 2 maulers over there on the right side. And then the most underrated point about this trade is I think Braxton Jones can be a really good player. And putting him next to possibly, this is Joe Thuney, this is hands down one of the top 3 left guards in the NFL. So you're letting Braxton Jones play next to a guy who is one of the best at his position in the NFL. And there is no question that that's going to help Braxton Jones out, or whoever's at left tackle is going to get some help, from Joe Thuney. That is awesome. Yeah, I think this trade is insane, guys. No, he is 32 years old. I would actually, he's on a 1-year contract right now. Hey, that's never going to happen. Never going to happen. Thank you for the super chat. Let me see if I had it here. So his cap hit this season is going to be around 16 million. I believe the official number is 16.9. I would actually not mind re-signing him, giving him a new deal, and letting him stick around for a couple of years. He's not as old. Think about this, guys. For the people who wanted to sign what's his name? Kevin Zeitler, right? If you wanted to sign Kevin Zeitler, who is 35 years old, right? If you wanted to sign a 35-year-old for a season, then I think you should be okay wanting a 32-year-old for 2 or 3 years, right? Now, right now, currently, Thuney is only on a 1-year deal. This guy's only on a 1-year deal. But this one's different than Kevin Zeitler to me, right? Kevin Zeitler is 35, and I would if we were bringing in Kevin Zeitler, I would want it to be for 1 year, and he's kind of a bridge player for someone we draft. Joe Thuney, though, this is a guy I think could be. I would want to sign him for Caleb's entire rookie deal almost. Give him at least a 2 or 3 year extension, right? He's 32. We've seen that guards, it's more popular around the NFL right now. Yeah, we gave up a 2026 4th-round pick. Anybody who missed it, we did not give up a pick from this year's draft. I have it scrolling across the bottom of the screen actually right now. A 2026 4th-round pick. So not a pick this year, a 4th-rounder next year. And on top of that, when you trade picks from next year, there's always a chance we can get that pick back, right? We could always trade down in the 1st round. Imagine if we trade down from even pick 9 to pick 10 this year. You can go down 1 spot and get a 4th rounder next year. So to me, it's not, I don't really care about that, a 4th rounder in next year's draft. My favorite thing about it is we didn't give away a pick from this year's draft, right? And Goro, Gator Bite said it right here. You can't have guys missing 8 games. I just talked about this a minute ago. And when you look at and this is what makes this move so great, right? Everyone's worried about bringing in offensive linemen that have missed games, right? But look at this list, right? I have the games missed on the right side of the screen between the position and the age, right? Every single free agent offensive lineman that we could have targeted this year has missed games this season. The only there's 2 guys on the entire list that didn't miss a game this year. Brandon Scherf and Patrick McCarry, right? And Brandon Scherf is a guy who his first 6 years in the NFL was injured twice as much as Tevin Jenkins. Now he has gotten healthy and played. He's gotten it together the last couple of years in Jacksonville, but he's also 33 years old now. So not a huge thing. Basically, but Joe Thuney, this guy has missed 2 games in his entire 9-year career, guys. 2 games in 9 seasons. And he's only making $16.9 million this year. He's an all-pro player, but that right there. There's a couple of points. There's so many parts about this trade that I love. I keep saying this is my favorite part, or this is the most underrated part. Look, he's missed 2 games in 9 seasons. This is a guy who's basically an Iron Man on the offensive line, someone who can help be a tone setter and completely change the front 5. This one is absolutely huge. He's also going to help Braxton Jones. That's a big key point of this as well. But to me, I think not giving up a pick in this year's draft is key, because when Ian Cunningham didn't take that job or didn't get the job, and then we already traded away our 4th rounder this year for Austin Booker last season, so we're already down a 4th round pick. Because of that, I think the key to this trade overall was not giving up a pick in this year's draft, because we already go from round 3 to round 5 without a pick. We don't have a pick in the 4th round. That's a long way to go. In a draft with this much depth, especially on the D line, you don't want to go 3 rounds without having a pick. So making that pick in next year's draft was huge, and getting the Chiefs. I was sitting here with my fingers crossed. I wish you guys could have seen me. I was like, please. The rumors said, I think Diana Rossini said something along the lines of it looks like it's going to be for a 4th round pick. And my eyes got big because I was like, ooh, we don't have a 4th this year. That means it could be a 4th next year. And I was all for that. I want that all about. Now, let me get to a couple of questions here. We definitely still need a center. I think Drew Dahlman is the clear. He should be our number 1 target in free agency. Anthony just asked it right here. Do you think he should be the target? Yeah, I do think that. And Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles have both said they don't think it's smart to have a rookie center with a rookie or young quarterback like Caleb Williams. He's not a rookie anymore, but he's going to be in year 2. So having a second-year quarterback who's going to be in the first year of an offense and a rookie center doesn't make sense. So to me, I do think we are 100% signing a center. And the only way that doesn't happen is, and this is probably 5% odds of this, if for some reason Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles were like, look, Joe Thuney can be our center, which he's been in the NFL so long and has played center, just he has 10,000 plus snaps at left guard. I say don't mess around with this. You have this guy as your starting left guard. You have Jonah Jackson as your right guard, right? You sign a center, either Drew Dahlman or Ryan Kelly, with the third option then being Josh Myers, the Packers center who's 25 years old. He's the one guy. Hey, if you want another guy who he's not a rookie, Josh Myers, right? He's not a rookie. He's been starting for the Packers for 3 straight seasons, and he's only missed 1 game in the last 3 years. So that's another option there. But here's what we do, guys, right? Anyone who wasn't in big favor of the Jonah Jackson trade, right? Now we draft a guard. Doesn't have to be in the first round, but you can draft a guard in round 2 or round 3. We got 3 picks in that range. and you let that guy develop behind Jonah Jackson. Or if Jonah Jackson gets hurt, guess what? We have a top 50 pick already waiting in the wings behind him to insert into the offensive line at right guard. That's how you build a front five. You not only do we sign some players, some veterans in free agency and make these trades here to solidify it, but then you draft some youngsters to develop behind them. And that way, when you draft guys, they don't have to start right away as rookies. You don't have to find something that, hey, this guy's a 5th-round pick from Southern Utah, and we got to throw him in to be our starting left tackle. We need guys who, let's get some 2nd-round picks who can come in and develop behind guys like Joe Thuney, who is a 4-time All-Pro. If you have a young offensive lineman, and I think that's another key point here. We traded for, we got some late people in. Let me break it down again. Chicago Bears have traded for left guard Joe Thuney from the Chiefs, All-Pro, 4-time Super Bowl winner. He has a cap hit of around $16.9 million this season. I actually think it'd be smart to give him a new contract, maybe extend him for 2 years, maybe even 3. This is a guy who I think could come in here and help solidify this offensive line for the next 2 to 3 years at least. And I'm super happy with this one, guys. Let's see what my man Emilio says here. He would have loved the young combo of Smith and Campbell at guard. Hey, man, it is great. I knew the Ashton Jeanty talk was going to come too. I knew a couple people were going to mention Ashton Jeanty. Let me ask a question to the chat. Maybe I should actually put this one in a poll, okay? Because there's been so much Ashton Jeanty talk recently, right? If the Bears end up signing Drew Dahlman now, right? Say we get our center to go with Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson, and then you have 3 potential Pro Bowl players on the interior of this O-line. Would that change your opinion? Insert Drew Dahlman at center right there. Would you be okay at this point in time with Drew Dahlman drafting Ashton Jeanty? I'll put the poll up. If we sign Dahlman, I also believe probably trenches, but I will say this is one of the deepest defensive line classes I've studied in my life. So we will still be able to add an edge rusher on round 2, but going with that best pass rusher at pick 10 would probably be the best option. I just want chat's talk. I'm not trying to push a narrative onto anybody. I just kind of wanted to understand how you guys are feeling because I've seen so much back and forth with it. To me, I'm not usually a fan of drafting a running back in the 1st round, right? Usually I'm not for it. But we saw the Lions do it a couple years ago. I will say Jeanty's the best running back I've studied since Bijan Robinson. So again, I'm not pushing for Jeanty. But I'm also not. Hey, Flying said it. Hey, there's so many people out there hating on Ashton Jeanty right now that I almost think it would be amusing to just get it. Look, I like Ashton Jeanty, but I think we go defensive line in the 1st round. And then on day 2, look what we're still able to do, right? We can add a top pass rusher in round 1. And then you come back on day 2 and you can add a defensive tackle, a running back, and a guard. Because we have 3 picks on day 2. I think we might also need a tight end, so there could be some other moves coming in free agency. Maybe Ryan Poles doesn't like this draft when it comes to the O-line. We'll see. If Carter and Graham are gone, hey, thank you for that super chat. Yeah, those are 2 players I would probably say right now at least I do not see falling to pick 10. Abdul Carter, if Abdul Carter or Mason Graham are on the board when we pick, I would run that pick up to the commissioner so fast. Those 2 guys are absolutely special players that can transform our defensive line. So yeah. But Big Wash says it right here. One of the biggest things against Ashton Jeanty for me, it's not that I don't think he's a special player. It's how many great running backs are in this draft, right? When you can still get a Caleb Johnson in round 3, or a Quinshawn Judkins in round 2, or a Travion Henderson, or maybe even a Devin Neal in round 3. There's RJ Harvey in round 3. One of those guys might fall to round 4 or 5. So there's just so many talented running backs in this class. I think someone mentioned Donovan Edwards. They're saying Donovan Edwards is going to fall to day 3. That's a guy you might be able to pick up in round 5 or 6. So that's how talented this year's running back class is. A guy like Ollie Gordon, who, yeah, he might not have the speed, he might not be the biggest home run hitter, but anybody who's a fan of David Montgomery, check out Ollie Gordon. This is a guy who's probably going to get drafted in round 5 or 6. He is a good running back. I like Ollie Gordon. So this year's running back class is just so special. That's why Ashton Genty is probably not the pick for me. But let's get back. We got some new people in the chat, guys. Let's go over this. The Chicago Bears have traded a 2026 fourth-round pick for Joe Thuney. The interior of our offensive line has been completely rebuilt now. We just need a center. We have our left guard. That's going to be Joe Thuney. We have our right guard. That's going to be Jonah Jackson. We traded a pick for him yesterday, and now we're trading. What was this here? Let's stop settling. I mean, you go best player on the board there, right? And that's where I'm going to say it just like with the Jonah Jackson trade. I trust Ben Johnson. I trust the guy who was part of the front office that developed Jonah Jackson, was also part of the front office that drafted Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round. So if Ben Johnson is pounding the table for Jahmyr Gibbs at pick 10, if that was the case, then sign me up. I'm all for it. But it's way too early to talk about that right now, guys. Free agency is what's coming up here. Yeah, and this is the key here, what R. Bickham says here. Shoring up the offensive line here, this is going to allow us to go best player available in the draft. And I think that's what Ryan Poles wants to do. You don't want to have to reach where we have to take a guard at pick 10 or we have to take a defensive end. I still think, hey, look, Dobbsy tried to do the trade on Madden and it wouldn't let him. He had to give him more picks and give him Tevin. Woo, that sounds about right. Yeah, there's no way the Chiefs should be trading an all-pro guard for a 2026 fourth-round pick. The reason they did this, like I said, the Chiefs do have some cap problems that they are facing. They also have Nick Bolton, who's headed for free agency. But what the Chiefs did here is they chose Trey Smith over Joe Thuney. And I would probably make the same decision if I were the Chiefs, right? Trey Smith is 25, Joe Thuney's 32. So if both of them are Pro Bowl level guards, but if you look at it side by side, Joe Thuney right now is a better guard than Trey Smith. Now he's also older, he's more accomplished, but he's also making less money because Trey Smith just signed a $23 million franchise tag. We got this guy for $16 million a season. Now it's only 1 year. I do believe we will restructure this contract. I would sign him to a longer deal. Can I get one more person? Okay, thank you. Let's look at it again. This is our new offensive line, guys. I believe Braxton Jones is going to be our left tackle, but they do plan. Ryan Poles said it. They plan on bringing competition at the position. So they could also end up drafting a guy who could play tackle or guard. That makes a lot of sense as well. Yeah, Michael said it here. Drew Dahlman is going to get paid. I think he instantly becomes our number one free agent target. We're going to look at Joe Thuney's numbers over the last couple of years. I looked at this right away when I started up earlier. No, I didn't, Eric. I didn't. I did not, bro. I did not. I didn't know if anybody gets that, but I don't like that number. No. These are Joe Thuney's numbers over the last 5 years. Only given up a total of 6 sacks in 5 seasons, 0 sacks this year. It's almost like he's gotten better as he's gotten a little bit older. This is the final year of his contract, Marcus. But I do believe he's a prime candidate to rework his deal. That might also be one of the reasons why he wanted to get traded, right? He's 32 years old. He has 3 straight all-pro seasons. Um, so I got yesterday we were at the cap of we were at 67 million. This is going to put us right about 50 million, guys. Right about 50 or 51 million in cap space left. 50 plus million basically. A lot less than we had 2 days ago, obviously. We brought in 2 big time guards. That's definitely taken away from our cap space. But we still have enough flexibility to go bring in 1 or 2, maybe 3 big time players in the trenches here. I still think we can go after someone, a pass rusher, either a defensive end or a defensive tackle, and bring in potentially a center as well. I think Ryan Kelly and Drew Dahlman are easily the top 2 targets right now. When you look at free agency, I'll throw that list up here again. These are the top targets, guys. This has their games missed, has their ages on here, has what position they play, and what their average annual value of a contract is projected to be. Drew Dahlman, according to Sport Track, he was projected at around 12 million a season is what he's going to get in free agency. I think with the salary cap going up, he's probably going to get more than that. I could see Drew Dahlman getting 15 million a season or more. I'd still be interested in that. But someone else just said it in the chat too. If we could snag a Josh Myers for 8 million a season, who's just 26 years old, honestly, that might be where I'm going. I mean, it's just there's a lot to that one. If you could not only will we be signing a young center if we added Josh Myers, but we're also taking one of the best offensive linemen away from the Green Bay Packers. And that makes it extremely interesting. But this is, guys, this is huge. Back-to-back days now, Ryan Poles has traded and added to the interior of this offensive line. We're now 4 days away from free agency. No, free agency actually starts up on Monday, JD. Free agency is the tampering period is actually official now. They made it an official tampering period, so you can actually announce deals and stuff during then. Thank you so much for the super chat. If Carter and Graham are gone, do you still take Will Campbell? That one's tough to me. I do think Will Campbell is one of my top choices. I don't know if he's number 1 right now. He's a guy, especially now that we have Joe Thuney, right? Now that we have our best position on this entire offensive line right now is left guard. If you're looking at our entire front 5, our best player is our left guard. And Will Campbell most likely is going to be a left guard in the NFL. So that makes me less likely to want to draft a guy whose position happens to be at the same one that our best player on the O-line plays. Now, if they still view him as a left tackle, and there are multiple people out there in the draft community that think even with his little bit shorter arms, that Will Campbell's footwork is so special, his athleticism is so good, that he is a guy that can stick at tackle in the NFL. That's a question for the GM, though. It's because we know Ryan Poles prefers, at least based on the 3 drafts he's done so far, they like their left tackles to have long arms. Not only does Will Campbell not have long arms, but he has short arms. He doesn't even meet the minimum requirement. He's short of that. So to me, I think Will Campbell's a guard. And I think we can already see, you guys see how just in the last 24 hours, the off season is kind of taking shape here. And you can kind of see where we're going with this. And a week from today, I think we'll be able to narrow down how many people we can get or who we're going to draft down to about 3 or 4 players easily. Right now, it's probably at about 10 guys. After free agency, after that first wave, we should be able to narrow down our potential draft picks at 10 to just a couple of players. Edward, great question there. Can we still get Josh Sweat? I actually recorded a video on this like 2 nights ago. I haven't released it yet. I'll probably do it tonight. I do think there's not only a I do think there's a chance that Josh Sweat gets to free agency. And I think he could be a target for the Bears if so. I think right now we have two things that we're going to go after when free agency starts, right? Now that we've added both guards, I think free agency starts, we're going to spend money at two positions, center and defensive line, probably an edge rusher. Now that guy it could be Chase Young, it could be Hassan Reddick, it could be what's Matthew Judon, it could be Khalil Mack. Yeah, it could be any one of those guys. I don't know if there's someone else just mentioned Hassan Reddick as well. Or we could go after a big time guy who's going to get a little bit more money. That would be Josh Sweat. But I think any of those guys on the defensive line are option. And when you look at the market and what's going to be available, I think Ryan Poles put himself in a good position because right now the guard market does not look very good. You have Will Zeitler, who's 35 years old. You have Will Fries coming off a broken leg. You have Aaron Banks coming off an MCL injury. So honestly, the guard position in free agency doesn't look great. But now we have our guards. So how does center look in free agency? Well, we got Drew Dahlman, who's probably top 5 in the NFL. Then you got Ryan Kelly, who has been one of the top 5 in the NFL. Well, let me close this. He's been one of the top 5 in the NFL for a long time. He's a long-time veteran, but he's getting up there in age and also coming off an injury. And then you have a younger guy like Josh Myers as well. But the center position in free agency, it looks like we should be able to find an answer to the position. You also have guys like Evan Brown, a sleeper position. But then when you look at defensive end and trying to find an edge rusher who can come in here and be a threat to get 10 sacks a season, there are a lot of options. I mentioned Josh Sweat. I mentioned Hassan Reddick. I mentioned now I'm forgetting the names. Khalil Mack, obviously. There's one I'm just forgetting. Oh, Matthew Judon is another one. Chase Young. Those top 5, those 5 right there are the 5 I would be most interested in. But then there are a plethora of other names as well of guys that you can get behind that could come in here and probably start at defensive end. Let me pull up my list. Oh, see, everyone in the chat's talking about Genty. Return of the Mac would make me so happy. Guys, listen. In just 24 hours, we've went from our interior of this offensive line having 0 starters and it being by far the biggest need of our entire offseason. This was our biggest need. Finding guards because we needed both guard positions. Now we just need a center and a defensive end. And then after that, you're kind of adding depth. You'd want to bring in some competition at left tackle. We need another tight end. And we need another defensive tackle, another running back, maybe a slot receiver. But those are minuscule needs. Those are needs that you can find in free agency. Those are needs you could maybe find in round 3 or 4 of the draft. But guys who can come in and be Pro Bowl type guards or help stabilize the front 5 of this offensive line, you don't find guys like that, especially year 1 in round 3 or 4. You just don't find that. So what Ryan Poles has done now is given himself ultimate flexibility here. I believe to go after a center and an edge rusher in free agency, and then pretty much maybe patch a couple more holes, and then we're going to draft best player available in the draft, whether that's defensive line, offensive line, running back, tight end, maybe even a safety. And he mentioned the name. I wanted to click on this one here because the name right there, Nick Emanuwari, one of the most freakish safeties I've ever studied in my life. Probably not very likely we end up with a guy like that, but it would be insane if we did. But guys, back-to-back days here. Let's go over this one more time, okay? Because so many people have joined late to the chat here. The Chicago Bears have traded a 2026 4th-round pick for Joe Thuney A guy who's given up just 6 sacks in the last 5 seasons, 4-time All-Pro, 4-time Super Bowl champion. Our new offensive line is going to look like this. Braxton Jones at left tackle. Joe Thuney is going to come in and be our left guard. Jonah Jackson will pivot over to right guard, where he did play a little bit in Detroit, and he also got a few reps at right guard last season in Los Angeles as well. I keep wanting to call him the St. Louis Rams. And then Darnell Wright, the third-year player who was the top 10 pick a couple years ago, a guy I believe is going to ascend and potentially be a Pro Bowl player. Ben Johnson actually compared Darnell Wright to Penei Sewell and said they're going to look a lot similar in this offense, so I love it. Tevin Jenkins is headed for free agency, man. I just made a video on it yesterday or day before, Buck. I'm with it. I think Khalil Mack would be a great addition. He would come in and start at defensive end, and then we would still draft an edge rusher as well. It's the same thing on both offense and defensive line here, guys. Just because we brought in a veteran, it doesn't prevent us from drafting a younger guy to develop behind him. So we signed Khalil Mack, right? And then you can still draft a guy like Princely Umana-Malayan out of Ole Miss or Jack Sawyer and let him develop behind him. Same thing with our right guard here, right? We got Jonah Jackson. He has missed some games, but he has Pro Bowl potential. I say we have to draft a young guard here that could play left guard or right guard. But it's also another guy who could make sense, though, is Gray Zabel. I haven't mentioned him yet today, but if you can get Gray Zabel, a guy who could back up a Drew Dahlman at center, he could challenge Jonah Jackson at right guard, and then he could also be an emergency kick-in if something happened to Joe Thuney at left guard. So I do think Gray Zabel is another option here that we're going to continue talking about. If he falls to the second round, I think he makes a lot of sense at pick 39. I have seen him. He's starting to go a little bit higher in mock drafts right now, right? I see people have him going somewhere in the 20s. To me, I have Gray Zabel as a guy who should be on the board when we're there in round 2. One of the easiest reasons is when you look back to last season and I look at the centers I studied then, Jackson Powers Johnson and Zach Frazier, those guys were better than Gray Zabel. They were on a high, they were better prospects than where Gray Zabel is right now. And they fell to the second round. So this draft is different though, because after the top 5 picks, you kind of just have a mesh of players from pick 5 to pick 50. It's just a mesh where these guys can go anywhere. You have a ton of guys who are borderline first round or probably first round talent guys. Some of them are going to fall to day 2. But some of these guys, this would be the year where you wish you could see NFL teams' draft boards. Just show us 2 different draft boards. No, he missed 2 games. He missed 2 games, DJ. He played 15 in a couple. Oh, you know what? You might be right. He might not have missed a game that season. They might have rested the starters. I'm going to have to look into that. I had it down as he missed 2 games in his career, but the Chiefs often rest their starters in week 17 when they clinch the playoffs. There's a chance Joe Thuney has never missed a game in his entire 9-year career, which is insane. I already thought he was an absolute Iron Man, but I thought he missed 2 games. He's never missed 1. That's exactly what we need on our offensive line. Joseph, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. Free agent safety. He sees a ton of good ones. And he says trade back in round 1 and take Gray Zabel and then spend both second rounders on defensive ends and a running back in round 3. I'd probably rather have 1 defensive end and 1 defensive tackle, especially depending on which defensive tackles are available in round 2. But I probably want to add a defensive tackle as well in this draft. It's stacked draft for defensive line, but I want to add 1 of each. But the options are endless, guys. Get in your final questions, guys. I've already been live for 45 minutes. The Chicago Bears have traded a 2026 fourth round pick for a four-time All-Pro guard. Ryan Poles has completely remade the interior of this offensive line in just 24 hours after trading for Jonah Jackson last night, a guy who spent 4 seasons in Detroit with Ben Johnson. So our offensive line now has two guys who have been to Pro Bowls. One is an absolute Iron Man and has to be considered one of the best guards in all of football. This was a crazy one, guys. Yeah, honestly, Eric, I mean, it was this one blew me away. I saw it happened so quick this morning. Diana Rossini and a couple people were reporting the Bears are interested in trading for Joe Thuney. So I started doing a little behind the scenes work on him already, and then what happened? It was like, oh, the Chiefs are already having talks. The Chiefs are engaged. I think Schefter came out was like Chiefs are engaged in trade talks, and it was like 10 minutes later, Bears have traded for Joe Thuney. I was like, yeah, it just it was so crazy this morning the way this one went. But clearly Ryan Poles has been all over it and been behind the scenes working. And when you look at one thing that I think a lot of people miss with Ryan Poles is he's always looking at the entire landscape here. And what these moves to me, what it signals to me is that the guards that he got in these trades, he evaluated better than the guys we could have signed in free agency. And I think it's also worth paying attention to what the guards signed for this season, right? Jonah Jackson is a $12 million cap hit, and right now Joe Thuney is a $16 million cap hit. So we acquired two starting guards with Pro Bowl upside for about $26 million cap hit. That is $3 million more than the Chiefs are paying for just Trey Smith alone. And I think some of these guards in free agency could come out and get a $20 million contract, $20 million a season. And if that happens, these moves are going to look even better a week from now. Yeah, create culture, most likely, yes. It's something I know a lot of people are like, why does arm length matter when it comes to draft prospects? Here's the thing. It's not something I care about, but it's something NFL GMs care about, especially when you have the freaky edge rushers that they have to face in the NFL every week. Like one week you're going against Joey or Nick Bosa. Next week you're going against a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau. Then you're going against a guy like Montez Sweat. It's crazy position, and people when you look around the NFL, if it didn't matter, then you would see more tackles with short arms, but you don't, because what happens is these guys who played tackle in the NFL or in college, they get to the NFL and they get moved inside to guard. So it was all over Twitter yesterday. There's a Sport Track. Yes, he's a $17.5 million cap hit, but 5 of that is going to the Rams. And he's still making his full money this season. If you look at Sport Track and if you look at what the Bears cap space was, we were at 80 million, right? They had us as Sport Track had us at 79.6. After the trade, they only put us down to 67.2. So they only took 12 million out of our actual salary cap. But yeah, close. But basically, if you have shorter than 33-inch arms, NFL teams will not play you at left tackle. There are very rare exceptions. And one team right now, there are 3 tackles in the NFL that have shorter than 33-inch arms. 2 of them are starting for the Colts. So that's like one team out of 32 that doesn't care about arm length. So if Will Campbell is going to stay at left tackle, might have to come with the Indianapolis Colts or something. But someone else could see it happen. I've also seen a couple scouts say with Will Campbell, especially, his footwork is so special that his arms don't matter as much. But it depends. To me, I think there's also something when you look at arm length, it's not just arm length. Also, your shoulder width matters. So if you have shorter arms, but you have very broad shoulders, you can still have the same wingspan of a guy who has arms that are an inch longer than you. Unfortunately, with Will Campbell, that's not the case. He still has a sub 80-inch wingspan, which to me is below the threshold to play tackle in the NFL. Salary cap is real. Playing with Ryan Bates, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know right now. I'm losing my voice. Ryan Bates is a guy, he won't, there's zero guaranteed money in his contract right now. We can cut Ryan Bates and save $4 million. Now that we've traded for 2 guards, keep an eye on that one, guys. J2K said it right there. If Will Campbell starts at OT in the NFL, he'll have the smallest wingspan in NFL history. That's why, to me, he's a left guard. Yeah, Braxton has 35 and 3/8. Darnell has nearly 34-inch arms. Karan Amagaji has 36-plus-inch arms. So that's something the Bears, they're clear that they want that, right? They want guys that have that arm length. But here, guys, big news for the Bears. Back-to-back trades to shore up the offensive line. Oh, I did miss one question. Someone asked about Josh Myers and why he isn't as highly sought out as someone like Drew Dahlman. Honestly, I don't have a real answer for that other than PFF grades, because a lot of people will look at PFF grades and Josh Myers' PFF grades are not very good. And they'll be like, he must not be very good. I don't study Packers all 22 tape. I'll tell you guys that much. I don't watch the Packers like that. But every time they play the Bears, I'm watching the all 22. And what I've seen from Josh Myers 2 times a season over the last 3 years is a guy who looks like he could be a really good center and possibly even with Pro Bowl upside. Now, is that maybe the Bears interior of our defensive line makes him look a little bit better than he is against other teams? That's possible. But Josh Myers is a guy I do like, so keep an eye on him as well. But Drew Dahlman is probably our number 1 target heading into free agency. I appreciate everybody who watched. We just added an all-pro Iron Man of a guard who has not missed a start in his entire career. Joe Thuney, welcome to the Chicago Bears. Please hit that like button for me, guys. I appreciate you guys. And I'll be back later breaking this down. I have a couple more things I wanted to talk about. Bear down.